Welcome to Calling All Voices, brought to you by Dementia Action Alliance and the Global Council on Alzheimer's Disease. My name is Deborah Tan, and I serve as a board member for Dementia Action Alliance. In the Calling All Voices podcast series, you will hear from people living with dementia and care partners from diverse communities. They will share their stories about resilience and persistence and how it can help people to continue to live meaningful lives, even with a diagnosis of dementia. And you will also hear these participants discuss why it is important that we call all voices to share their experiences.
Hi, my name is Paula Mueller, and I'm the founder of CareLink 360. In this series of podcasts, I'm participating as a volunteer because I wanted that the communities hear the voices of the Latino community. I was born in Chile, but I'm living in the US for a long time. But as you can see, my roots are very much close to my family in Chile, and I'm connected to all Latin America and all the Latino communities in the US. So welcome to this podcast, Calling All Voices, Perspective from the Latino Community. 2 years ago, I spoke with Karen Love at the Dementia Action Alliance conference because I was very excited of seeing the announcement for the podcast and publication for perspective, calling all voices, perspective from the Black and also perspective from the LGBTQ plus community. And I thought we need to also hear the voices from the Latino community. And Karen very kindly accepted the proposal, and we got this project going, from which you will hear a few of the interviews that I did. I'm very happy to present you this project because it's very important that also among the Latino community, we speak about dementia. Many times we consider that this is something that we shouldn't speak about. There is a lot of stigma around the word dementia. And the people at the end, people experiencing the dementia, and also their family caregivers, their care partners, feel that they are very much alone, and this is something that is only happening to them, but it's not. So now you're going to hear my conversation with Myra Garcia. Myra is a remarkable woman, very talented, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's a few years ago. She will tell us about the difficulties of finding the right diagnosis for what she was experiencing and how she's thriving, living with dementia, and all her efforts in terms of advocacy and talking about it in order to raise awareness about the disease. Let's listen. Myra, thank you so much for joining us again. And let's start with, if you don't mind telling us your story. I mean, your hobbies, your family, um, just tell us. We want to get to know you a little bit. So, what you have been doing and what you are doing today. So, a little bit to get to know you. If you can share with us your story.
Yes, I'm very happy to do that. And thank you so much for reaching out to me. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that very much. I am the daughter of Cuban immigrants. They came over from Cuba straight to New Jersey because my mother's two sisters had already made the trek to New Jersey. And so that's where I was born. My sister was born in Cuba. I was born in the US. So I was the first among the family members. I had a wonderful growing up. We were very poor, but we didn't know that we were poor. And we loved, we went to church every week. Everybody in my family could sing. And so it was just, there was beautiful music. all the time. Generally, it was church music, but it was beautiful music all the time. My grandmother lived with us. She really took me under her wing, and I know that she and I had a very, very special bond. And so I I loved school from the beginning, from elementary school. I couldn't understand why all the children were crying on the first day of elementary school in, you know, baby land.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand why they were so upset. I loved it from the very first moment. So I excelled in all aspects of school. Um, I had I was very fortunate to have a beautiful music teacher in high school. I signed up for choir because I thought it would be an easy A.
Okay.
I never thought about music as a career or anything like that. It was just what we did at our house. And that very first day, I was just like all of the new students, all of the freshmen, I had to have a little test with the music teacher. And immediately, because I could play the piano and I could sing, immediately she said, from now on, I will be your music teacher and your voice teacher. And that was the case all the way through elementary. Then I majored in music in college, had a wonderful career. I had opportunities to perform at the Repertorio Español of New York City, because I was living in New York, in the New Jersey, New York area. And I had opportunities to perform at Avery Fisher Hall in New York, in so many different opportunities. I already mentioned Repertorio Español, but I also was the lead soprano in different churches and temples, Jewish temples, because I was wherever I could sing, I was there. And so that was the beginning of my life. I then transitioned from when my second son was born. I realized that I could no longer do all of the travel that's related to performance. And so, that was hard. That was hard because I had just been granted a part in a play, and I had to say no because it was a traveling show, and I would not be able to do that with two sons. So I migrated into the field of fundraising, university and school fundraising, and I found that that was really fun and wonderful, and that I could make a difference at all of these educational organizations. I made it to the level of vice president at two universities, and unfortunately, that was when my disease was starting to take hold. The first thing that I was seeking was, I knew that there was something wrong. I knew that my aunts had Alzheimer's, so I thought that I had Alzheimer's, but my neurologist said, no, 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 what you have is ADD. And so when I heard the ADD designation, I literally burst into tears of joy, because I knew, I had seen it with my aunts, how difficult and how painful Alzheimer's is. And I was just thrilled that I was given the ADD moniker. So I was on those drugs for a number of years, but I knew that things still weren't right. It took quite a long time, and it wasn't until COVID that I found a neuropsychiatrist who gave me a battering of testing, 8 hours, literally 8 hours of testing in one day. It was very, very challenging. And at the end of the day, after she had really taken hold of all of the pieces, she brought me back to her place and shared with me that what I had was early stage Alzheimer's disease. And I think that I accepted that very easily, because it was, in a way, something that I was expecting my whole life. Not my whole life, but my adult life. And so it was very hard on my husband, extremely hard. He really thought that I was just not giving it enough time with the other drugs that I was taking for ADD, etc. And so my neuropsychiatrist suggested I get involved with the Alzheimer's Association and I get myself into a clinical trial. I know that I'm doing something not just for myself. It's not just for me, but it's for all of those other people just like me who have this disease and don't know how to do the things that they used to be able to do. And so that is my story. And I feel that I have been given a gift because I can help other people. I can help the scientists by sharing my experiences. And I'm also just enjoying life.
Oh, that's
So thank you
wonderful,
so
Myra.
much for asking the question.
No, I appreciate your story. It's so beautiful. And Myra, tell me, have you noticed you have been in this clinical trial for a number of years now?
Yeah.
And have you noticed any difference? Do you feel that this is the right track? Was the right diagnosis in comparison with your life when you were diagnosed with ADD?
Yes, I think it's the right diagnosis. It is congruent with what I was feeling all those years. And yes, I have an infusion every month. And that's really it. I mean, we also have cognitive testing on a regular basis. That's usually very challenging because they're testing me. And
Yes.
so, it's challenging. But I'm just so grateful to be able to be part of this solution. And because I feel that I am plateauing, I don't feel that
Okay.
I don't necessarily feel that it's better, back to my earlier years. I don't expect that would happen anyway. But I feel that I'm in a plateau. I can still drive, I cook, I do the housework, I go to the movies, I, sing in 3 choirs. So I'm doing, I think, just about everything that I could possibly do. Oh, and Peloton and exercising, all of that.
That's wonderful.
So,
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I mean, you feel that you are in control of your life. The control that is so important. And tell me, as a Latina, also, it's very important that you participate in the clinical trial because our community, and that's why we are doing this podcast, to elevate the voices of the Latino community and that they participate and be aware of the clinical trial and of the option. We need diversity.
Absolutely. And I did not realize that so many, well, obviously in my family, we're all Latinos.
Mm.
It was in my family, but I was not aware that that other people, whether it's Jewish or Christian or um, Chinese, whatever it is, that this disease is everywhere,
Mhm.
and that everyone should have access to um, potential drugs or care. All of that. All of that goes into being just a person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so important to raise awareness of the disease in the different communities, because there is a lot of um, probably when you were growing up and your aunts had the disease, probably you were not talking about Alzheimer's, you were talking probably of something else. It's just the normal aging process, and it's not the normal aging process. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you experienced that with your aunts when you were growing up?
Yes, I vividly remember one day we were visiting with my aunts in Miami, and we were walking around, and then all of a sudden the question of Alzheimer's came up. And I think it was one of my aunts um, had knew about it and knew that this was happening to her. And that was the first I had ever heard of Alzheimer's. I had no idea. And my mother's older sister, my aunt, that was my aunt, not the, well, so one of my aunts. And she fortunately had a very wonderful home situation. She was married, but um, she was married, and her daughter took care of her, my cousin. And so took care of her from beginning to end. And I remember those days when I was visiting them in Miami and seeing that she didn't remember me. I was her goddaughter,
Mhm.
and yet she could not remember me. And we spent a lot of time together. So that was challenging, and I think that was the beginning for me of my awareness of this disease. But my mother's other sister had a really terrible situation. She had widowed, and my cousin, her daughter, um, has is a person with difficulties,
Mhm. Yeah.
physical, mental difficulties. And my aunt could not take care of her, but yet they were living alone, the two of them,
Mm.
in a condo. And when I went to visit them, their home it was just a pigsty. They had not been cleaning, they had not been bathing. It was truly eye-opening and very scary. And I tried to get them to take a bath, etc. And they just wouldn't have it. And then not too long after that, I learned that um, she was living in a condo. The condo was fully paid for, but she had not paid the association fees. She had stopped paying the fees. They kept asking for the fees, and my aunt and my cousin, they would never open the door because they didn't know why they were asking them for this. It was just the forgetfulness of what is a normal situation. And so they were put out on the street. So at that condo organization, they said, well, these women are not paying their dues, and they're not even responding to our um, to our how do you say it? They're not responding to us when we're saying you need to pay your association fees. And so they put them out on the street, literally everything that they owned on the street. And at that point, I was living in New Jersey. They were in Miami. There was nothing that I can do. I had to depend on other cousins. And, unfortunately, they lost their condo. And then then we were able to find a place for them to live, a sort of a continuing care organization. And that's where they spent the rest of their lives.
You raise such an important point with your story, Myra. We don't know how many families are experiencing those challenges. If you have, especially with the special needs kids, when the parents develop a disease and the kids cannot care for their parents, so nobody cares from anyone, and those challenges appears. And if they are not, if the social services are not in place that can oversee them, those difficult situations are the ones that arise. And if no family member, luckily you as a family member and your family members were able to step in and help them. But how many cases probably nobody step in and they are just left on the streets?
Oh, yes.
This is something that we don't speak too much about it. But thank you for bringing that, because the story of your aunt probably still repeats today, unfortunately.
I'm sure.
We have to make a point of it.
Yes.
Which is a consequence, a side consequence of the disease for many persons. Yes. So, Myra, you mentioned in your story before, for your husband was very challenging to accept the diagnosis, and he was one of the first probably that learned about your diagnosis. How was and with whom else did you share your diagnosis in your family and friends, and how did they take it?
That's a great question. Once I got my diagnosis, I sat my husband down and said, this is what it is. And now we have to tell our sons what's going on. And so I put together a chart, and I made a list of all of the people that I wanted to inform, and in which order. And so I started with my older son and my younger son, both sons, at the same time. I didn't want them to hear it secondhand. And so I I called them both and I said, you know what? And this was COVID time.
Right.
Yeah. We aren't able to see each other. We aren't able to get together. Why don't we talk to each other on the telephone, or let's do a Zoom? And so that's what we have done. So that very first day, we created a Zoom call, and I shared what was going on because I wanted them to know. I wanted them both to know at the exact same time. I didn't want one to learn and then the other one to hear. And so I shared the whole thing. They asked me so many questions. They wanted to know, what about the ADD? And, I went over the whole process with them. And they were so wonderful, as I knew they would be. They were kind and gracious, and they heard my story. They accepted my story. And then that became the beginning of a weekly family meeting on Zoom, because we're all in different parts of the country. And it's wonderful. And so, whereas previously we didn't have that regular connection, now we have that. So that was wonderful. And once I was done with informing our sons, then I went to all of my friends, my best friends, then my next best friends, my friends from church, my friends from college, all of that. And so little by little, I was sharing my story. And it's been wonderful. I mean, number one, just reconnecting with some people who I'd lost along the way. And, of course, they also couldn't believe that this was really happening. But I'll tell you, this disease has given me a platform, and it has been giving me an opportunity to share my story, because my story is just like so many other people's stories. And other people may not have the wherewithal to talk about it or to know what to do to have a good and meaningful life, even with this disease.
Right. I mean, listening to you it gives us hope that you can live with the disease and still have a meaningful and an impactful life like you are having, Myra. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And tell me, was the reaction of most of the people positive, in the sense that they were embracing you? Or because sometimes people tell me it could be a lonely disease, it could be a lonely period, that not everyone, some people may go away instead of getting closer. Has that been your experience in some aspect?
No, not really. I think
Great.
that I was sharing my story in such a way, and I would give them kind of the background, the time with ADD, et cetera, and then being able and reminding them that I lost a vice presidency. And why did I lose a vice presidency? And I thought it was ADD, but it wasn't that. And because they already knew about that first part of my story, then when I said, this is the disease, this is what I have been tested, and it is real. And then when you do that, it's hard for them to argue with that. So that's, I think I did that pretty well, doing it in little snippets of time, but ultimately sharing it with all of the people I care about.
Absolutely. I think sharing it fulfills several purposes, right? One is for them to understand from where you are coming from, your changes, but also to educate them in the disease and how and the possibilities, what really the disease is and what is not. And it's not something that only happened to people that are older, because it happens to you when you were very young. I mean, a professional in the peak of your career. I mean, a vice presidency. So you are fulfilling so many important messages and education and awareness which is also important in our because there's so many misconceptions, miseducation. I mean, it's all very
And
important.
that's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so harsh for the families, knowing that there are things that they can do for their brain health, or exercising, or being part of a study. And so some people are afraid of those kinds of things, and they
Yeah.
just don't want to believe that it's happening, and they just want to put it across in the closet as if it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. And so I feel that I've been given an opportunity to share my story so that people can see that we can still be helpful, we can be cogent, we can have fun with our lives. It's not just, it is eventually it will be a death sentence. We all know that, but we all know that we are all going to go at some point in time.
Absolutely.
And the question is, what are you going to do with your life in the meantime? You might not be able to work. In my case, I can no longer do numbers. I just have lost that ability. I have lost my ability of spelling, and I was a spelling bee champion in elementary school.
Yes.
And so, but I have come to terms with that. Those are things that do frustrate me when I can't get the right word. But it's that's a small item when it comes to the fullness of my life.
That is so powerful message, Myra, and I want that it synced in with our audience, because it's true, you cannot do all the things that you used to do, and even the things that you excelled at doing. But that is a minor price in order to see the big scope, the big picture, which is what are you going to do with the rest of your life with the capabilities that you have. And that applies to all of us, because we know that we all we have a finite time in this world. So, but you really embrace it, and it's such a powerful message. That thank you so much for pointing it out. Thank you, Myra.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So tell me in the last few minutes, if you have a message for our listeners and viewers, what would you like to share with us? You have shared already so much and so beautiful, but if you want to leave us with some message that you haven't told us already, what would it be?
Well, I would say, if you have a loved one who has changed in strange ways, have changed who they are, what they do, be kind. Be kind, be helpful, help them manage this new world, this new life that is now theirs. I would say, remember that this is not something we have chosen. This is something that has come to us, and we need them. We need our friends. We need our family. We need our neighbors. And with all of those three partnerships, we can continue to have lives that have meaning. And I think that that's just so important. And I hope that others will recognize that we just all want to have a good life, and that we can help each other with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, Myra. It has been, again, a pleasure speaking with you. And I appreciate so much all your work, all your efforts, all your advocacy, and sharing your story, because it's so important that everyone here, your experience, that is helping so much and it's been so impactful. Thank you so much, Myra. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Paula.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Calling All Voices. If you're interested in learning more, please visit Dementia Action Alliance and or the Global Council on Alzheimer's Disease websites for resources and information on Calling All Voices. The creation of this podcast was sponsored by Otsuka Pharmaceutical Development and Commercialization Incorporated. This podcast is not, however, intended to provide medical advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions represented herein solely belong to the individuals sharing their experiences and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Otsuka Pharmaceutical Development and Commercialization Incorporated or its affiliates. If you have specific questions, medical questions that is, by all means, contact your healthcare provider. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please make sure to subscribe to this series and share a review and let others know what you heard and or experienced on today. I'm Dr. Tan, and bye for now.